Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today I am using some products from the newest release, the Maker's Mix. This is the tin palette, Lovely Layers tin palette. The sentiment is don't worry, be crafty. And then I'm also using these swatch all the things. They are made to do swatches, but they are size large enough that you could use them in your card making, which I'm using it in this one. And then there's another video I have where I used it in those as well. The interesting thing about this particular die is that you can use it to create a card. That's obviously what I did. Or you could actually use it to swatch your watercolors. Because you can cut out each of the individual sections, and then the palette is kind of like pre-scored where the hinges are. So you could just fold them in and it would make like a fancy little palette with all your colors on it, which I love. I think that's super cute. And it would be a great shaped card. I did not do that today. I did it a little bit differently. But so here I basically started by cutting everything out of white, and then the little Fernels saying happy. Fernels. I think they have it on. Anyway, I decided to go ahead and cut those out of silver mirror cardstock. And then I'm going to start coloring up my paint palette. Now, you do not have to be like as detailed with the shading or anything like that. You can color it any way you would like. You could start with colored cardstock to make it a little bit easier. But I was going for more of like a silvery gray. So with all the lovely layers, there's always areas that are embossed, so that you can see whether it's an embossed detail that's meant to be seen itself, or if it's an embossed detail that is meant to show you where you're going to line up your extra pieces. So in this case, what you see me outlining with my darkest color, which I believe is a C7, is the area where it creates the wells. Like, so you would have 3 distinct wells to mix your colors in. So for the shadows, I am going in pretty heavy-handed with those darker grays to midtones. And then for more along kind of like the center, we will get a little bit lighter. I'm not worried about covering up the area where the other die cut pieces to create the well are going to be, because those are meant to be lighter. So if I add, just a little bit of C3 and a little bit of C1 there, they're still going to be lighter and read that way, without really with minimal effort from us. So that is what we're doing on that side. We're going to do all of the coloring for this palette in the grays, the cool grays. Any cool gray family that you have will work. I am using my Olo markers for this particular one. And if you watch me in my lives, you know that I dry fit everything like a bunch of times, because in the live I can't cut it out. So you get to see everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly from the beginning to the end. Whereas the magic of video editing, you get to skip all those boring parts. So here I've added a little bit of shading on the inside with a C3, and then I'm going over that with the C1, so that those are going to be nice and bright when we adhere them on, and it will help it to look like it is raised because we have that shadow behind and then the lighter area on top. For the middle section, which is actually what holds our paint tins, outside of doing the shading in between each of the tins, that's really all I'm going to do. It's not a lot of real estate, and so once you start going in and kind of outlining each one of the colors, it doesn't take very long, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. So I do like this one quite a bit, though. And hence why it was one of the first ones I pulled out to make a card with. And you guys know that I do love a scene card. And this kind of borders on a scene card. Not so much like cutesy animals dancing on a hill scene card, but, like paint palette on a countertop waiting to be used to the fullest of its potential. So, funny story, my family and I recently did like kind of a long vacation weekend with my in-laws. And so we went to the lake, and the kids wanted to play in the lake. I do a lot of things for my kids because I love them, but going into Lake Erie is probably not one of them. It's probably not one of them. I mean, I would if literally there was no other choice and I had to save their life. But other than that, no. But my husband is a trooper, and so he went in with them. I did some playing in the sand, very minimally, but I was happy to be the person who shuttled them to, the little one to the splash pad and all of that stuff. But anyway, I was looking at the little shops that were around there, and it's super cute. It's called Lakeside, that little community. And so they have a lot of little shops that are within walking distance, and very, very adorable. So I went in to see if I could find a football for Peanut and Eric to just throw around. And so I see, like, the woman behind the register is kind of like chit-chatting with the people before her, and I'm standing there, and I can see that she has Gonzai Tommy watercolors sitting on her desk. And I'm like, I know what those are. So let's go back to this. So here, these two larger wells, I'm just doing the same thing. I want it to be nice and light in the middle because we are later on going to put a quote unquote watercolor puddle in there. I'll show you how to do that technique as well. But so I wanted everything to be like this grayish silver, which is just like a nice neutral. Then from there, we can start with the additional things. So I chose to go with a black for the watercolor paintbrushes. So for that, I just used a C9 and a black, like nothing extraordinary about this shading. And I'm not overly worried about it getting, like if it taking it up too high, because the edges for the brushes, I'm going to do brown. And then remember, we have that little Fresnel metallic piece that goes in between that's going to connect the two. So here I'm lining up all of my paints, and then I picked out just a rainbow of colors to color my little paint squares. So we've talked about before how alcohol markers are transparent. And so I intentionally did not fill them in nice, neat, solid lines. I intentionally kind of overlapped them and filled them in a little differently because it helps to give the idea of like a watercolor pan that maybe, you use one color more than the other or one side of the color more than the other. There's more of an indent. So adding that texture in there is a really nice way to kind of help give the look of the watercolor without actually watercoloring. And I do have the full set of Olo markers. So I had a wide variety to choose from, but if you don't, you can always layer your colors to get like a third or a fourth color. So for like example, we just did the yellows and the yellow greens. If you don't have that bright yellow green in between, you can combine the two and it'll make the yellow green. So don't feel like, well, I don't have 12 different colors, Kelly. You can make them. You can make them just by glazing them together. And they'll look different based on what color you put on bottom and what color you put on top. So now that those are done, this little paint tube is for the swatches, the swatch all the things. But I am going to use it to complete my card by laying it on top of my little paint palette as if like I just filled my little half pan. I'm trying to I find it easier to talk about my cards when they are in front of me. But sometimes I don't get that because sometimes they're in other places. And like this one's one of the ones that when we did the release party, I had them all in a pile so that I could show all of them on camera. And so I didn't know where this one ended up. But now I found it while we were chit-chatting. So for this watercolor tube, I did the paint palette in the cool grays. So for this one, I am going to do in the warm grays just so it stands out a little bit nicer than the, up against the cool grays. And then this is a really easy shading technique. I actually have a whole video that I will be doing shortly on how to do this type of shading and get really good results very quickly with like almost no effort from us, which, let's be honest, that's kind of something that we all look forward to, right? And they have like very, very much have a beginner level feel, but with like fantastic results. So even if you are a beginner, you can still get results that you're super happy with. And since I did want these to read as white, I did not, color over all of the white with my gray, just enough to add that shading. Now, the reason that I had to put everything together and lay it out before I did my paint tube is because I needed to know what color I could do it that would be that visual triangle. So that is why I took the time to lay them out. Now, shocking, it is blue. That's not, that was not my intention. That is just the way that it worked out for the visual triangle. So now for this little faux watercolor look, I go in with a darker blue and just kind of do some dots. I go right over top of that with a lighter blue and do some more dots. If I feel like it needs a little bit more depth or darkness, I may go back in with that first color. And then from here, I'm going to use my colorless blender. I cannot find my Olo one, so I just use the Copic. They work the same. And then I'm going to use the tip-to-tip method. So I'm going to use the actual colorless blender to pick up some of that light blue, and then that's going to be the edges of my puddle. And truthfully, I get pretty good like faux watercolor results that I'm happy with using that technique. So then for the sentiment, it says life is better when you're crafting. I wholeheartedly agree. So I did stamp that down. I chose a gray. I could have gone with a black, but I felt like we were having a lot of grays in this card and that would match better and it wouldn't be quite so stark. So I did white heat emboss that on the gray and then cut that out with its coordinating die, which Honeybee always makes super simple to do because they're not difficult to line up at all. So for this, I chose a marble background, and this is actually from one of our paper pads. They're meant so that you can cut them in half and have two A2 size card fronts. And this is from the, textures and textiles and texture birthday, I think is the one. But anyway, it's just a marble. They have a lot of different ones. They have wood. They have this brick you can see on the back of it. I just thought the marble would look nice. So I am going to adhere that onto the card base. And then that way, I think I did have to trim off just a little bit on the bottom. Yep, I did. Just like, what is that, like a half an inch? So I just had to trim that off. And then I can start working on building out my card. Please excuse any noises, any noises that you may hear. While we were out of town, I did not pack any nail polish. And you guys know how I'm about nail polish. My nail polish started chipping pretty much like week 1, day 1. And I tried to ride it out for as long as possible because I didn't have anything with me and I didn't want to go buy something. So I did ride it out, but I cannot, now that I am home, I cannot I can't just accept that this is the way my nails look right now. Everybody's got their things. Mine's hands. So anywho, now that we can start building and putting this thing together, I put in those little gray areas, that are going to create the wells. If you're not liking the way that it's looking, if it looks a little bit stark, you can always go back in, with your shadow colors and try to blend that in a bit. And then I have these paint brushes, and the intention is to just make them the accessories, to help kind of build out what we have going on in the scene. I added those little metal pieces, and I do think that helps make everything look just like a little bit more realistic. It's all in the details. Like, you don't have to be the world's best colorist, but if you can catch the details and put all of those things in there, you will still, even if you don't spend, it's hours and hours honing your coloring like some of us, you can still end up with a really, really pretty card. And this actually did not have a lot of crazy Copic coloring, or alcohol ink coloring. So I'm starting with the red, and of course I'm going to go in the Roy G. Biv because I can't stop myself. It's got to be the rainbow. So I'm going to go right across the top. Now, this was kind of an added bonus that kind of happened after I started putting them down. I realized, towards the end, that as I was putting them down together, I was coming up with some really beautiful color combinations, like 3 color combinations. So the first one is the red and a yellow and a blue, which is obviously the primary colors. But then the next one is like a pink and a lime green and a royal blue. And I like that one too. And then the one on the end, the orange and the teal and the purple, that's very tropical. Or you could take it a completely different way and go like Halloween. So I think that's really, really fun to, just an added bonus that happened. So now here I am struggling a little bit with how deep the shadow was on the one side. And so I put in the darker color that I wanted, and now I'm going to go in and blend those out with that mid-tone, so that I am much happier with that. Now, because the palette is very generously sized so that you can use it as a shaped card or to use it to do your own swatches, it does hang off an A2 size card just a little bit. But honestly, the part that I had to trim off, I did not even think was bad. And I didn't think it took away from the design. I did think that the, what are those? The paint tins, they needed a little bit more dimension. And so I am going through and just kind of, darkening those up. Yes, there were some that I did get ink on. I just went back in with its main color and went right around the edge and didn't have any issues. So now all of these, because the alcohol markers are transparent, you can get deeper, darker color by doing the same color over the top. So for all of them, I did a chubby L shape on the bottom left-hand corner, just to help give them a little bit more dimension. And I was happy with the way that looked as well. The yellow was the hardest one to get the gray off of, but no big surprise because it's a lighter color. So, but yeah, I did not do my normal ton of Kelly shading to this, and I'm still really happy with the way that it came out. I think that there's definitely some more things we can play around with that faux watercolor puddle. I think that's really fun. I also think that we could turn this into some other things. We could play around. I cannot stop yawning, and I'm so sorry. And normally I would cut it out of the video. In fact, I've already cut out 2 yawns. But today is we've been back from the lake for a half an hour. So between getting up, doing the whole breakfast thing with the kids, getting them ready, going to the pool for a couple of hours, coming back, doing lunch, getting Jelly Bean down for her nap, and then, packing everything up and driving back home. I am whipped, y'all. I'm tired. So I apologize for my little yawn. I'm sure after getting a good night's sleep in my own bed tonight, I'll be back and ready to be at it tomorrow. So I laid that down there, the little paint tube, to help fill that space in. And then at the opposite angle, I'm going to add in my little paintbrush. Again, those do hang off. I'm going to trim them off. I feel like that adds to the character. And just like, it looks like there's a continuation of the scene, which I'm a big fan of. And then I put another paintbrush, in our little puddle. Had I thought about it, I could have, painted it blue, but watercolors are transparent, and even if it had blue paint on it, you wouldn't see it anyway. And then I put down my sentiment flat, which says life is better when you're crafting. Now we're going to go through and trim everything out. And then I didn't really add a ton of detail work. You absolutely could do like glitters, glossy accents, all of those things, and I have on other cards, but for this one I just kept it super simple. I did add the shimmer to my watercolor paper, or my watercolor puddle, and all of my paints, because my paints should be glittery. That would make me happy. And then I added a white highlight to the paints, to the paint brushes, and then to just the side of the label for the paint tube. And then that's the whole card. I love the way this came out. If you have not checked out the Maker's Mix release from Honeybee, I highly recommend it. So much stuff in there for us crafters, card makers, if you sew. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.